Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us at our next panel, which is Accelerating the Adoption of SAF, Catalyzing a Pivotal Moment for the Global Aviation Industry. My name is Sophie Byron. I am the Global Director of Biofuels Pricing at Platts, which is part of S&P Global Energy. And I'm joined by an excellent panel here. So we have Ashish Gakwad, who's the Managing Director of Praj Industries, Maurits van Tol, CEO of Catalyst Technologies at Johnson Matthey, Vijay Nirani, the founder and CEO of TrueAlt Bioenergy Limited, and Sylvain Caballari, who's the Senior Vice President of Sustainable Fuels, Chemicals and Circularity at Technip Energies. So we have two more technical and two on the producing side. So hopefully that's going to give us a really good discussion here today. But before we get on to those questions, I'm just going to talk a little bit about, where we stand currently. Now, India's aviation industry is going through a huge expansion. We know about all of these airport developments and growth, and that is reflected in expected jet fuel demand. Jet fuel demand in 2025 was about 208,000 barrels a day. We're going to see that increase by about 50% in the next decade, and then more than double by 2050. And that's then mirrored by an expansion of supply. So despite that increase in demand, India is expected to remain a net exporter of jet fuel. Now, if we add a little SAF context, SAF demand in 2025 was about 2 million metric tons. So that's about 44,000 barrels a day. So just a tiny fraction of global jet demand. That's expected to grow this year, 2.5 million metric tons, 3 million next year. So starting from a low base, but really kind of massive amounts of growth. But what we're really going to focus on is scaling up. How do we get those low numbers, increasing both locally, but on a global scale as well? And we're going to start with feedstock. Feedstock is a very hot topic when you're talking about scaling up SAF. So let's start on a kind of general aspect. How important is feedstock availability? So maybe let's start on this side. If you want to kick us off?
Sure, yeah. First of all, thank you for having me on the panel. I appreciate it. Feedstock probably is one of the top three most important points as far as SAF and its economy is concerned. Because it will decide on what's the ultimate price for SAF. It will decide on the overall assurance of supply constantly, and it will also decide on the cost of conversion. So all of these are going to play very, very important role. We believe that the choice of the feedstock when we conceptualize any project is going to be one of the fundamental decisions that the investors will have to do. And when you can of course create aviation turbine fuel from the conventional sources and also from the bio sources. And when you look at the bio sources, you can have it either from the crop-based biosources or other biosources. When we've done our analysis, it is very, very, very clear that the crop-based feedstock is going to be the best suited when it comes to the real GHG reduction in the entire cycle when you consume the SAF or the aviation turbine fuel. And within that spectrum of choices that we have between, let's say, a corn or a grain-based feedstock or a sugary feedstock, or then moving into some of the biomass-based feedstock, clearly the winner is going to be the agri-residue biomass-based feedstock. So we believe that in the time to come, when the carbon trading becomes more and more intense and the people are going to weigh their choices based on the carbon intensity number, the winner can come from crop-based, and within that, it would be from the agri-waste. It could be bagasse, it could be rice straw, it could be corn cobs, etc., etc., and then you convert that into intermediates like ethanol, and then convert ethanol into the jet fuel. So coming back to some just simplifying the answer to your question, feedstock is going to be a very important consideration.
Yeah. Now, Vijay, I saw you kind of nodding along with that one, from a producer perspective. So, do you agree on that focus on a crop base, but also on that need for diversification of feedstock as well?
Absolutely, I couldn't agree more to what Ashish said. Um, India has a lot of, we're one of the largest sugarcane manufacturers. An interesting fact is ISMA, the Indian Sugar Mills Association, recently commissioned a report on the life cycle assessment of alcohol to jet using ethanol sourced from molasses. Now, of course, 2G ethanol, what converting biomass into aviation fuel is the best thing to do because we have abundance of biomass available, at least in the Indian perspective. Even if we don't have enough 2G just yet, we have a lot of molasses-based ethanol, let's say the C-heavy molasses-based ethanol. The carbon intensity per kilojoules on the liter of SAF that we could derive from molasses-based ethanol is hardly 15 to 16 uh, as compared to your grain-based ethanol, which is at around 65 to 70. It's almost equally good compared with 2G ethanol. If it could also be better because it's a low hanger, and we have abundant of ethanol available already.
Yeah.
Now, just to add on to it, is when we speak of the whole cycle of sustainable aviation fuel using feedstocks, I'm not just talking of the feedstock on converting the raw material. It's also the kind of steam you use here with green steam, the kind of power you use, it comes from cogeneration, the kind of hydrogen that would go into making this SAF molecules would come in from green hydrogen through biomass gasification. I'm not talking of electrolyzers wherein you consume a lot of power, you consume a lot of water. Today, the price of green hydrogen is almost $4 to $5 a kg. As compared, biomass gasification is a big winner. So we have biomass and agri inputs going into making your getting the energy to the aviation industry. So it's very exciting.
Yeah. Okay. And what about, on the technology side? How can technology kind of deal with that challenge where you've got, crop-based, biomass-based, or a huge section of feedstocks that you're trying to pull together into one stream?
Yeah, and to build the bridge to that, I would like to explain in 10 seconds what we do with Johnson Matthey. Yeah, for more than 60 years, also for 60 years here in India, what we do is help our customers convert oil, gas, coal into hydrogen, methanol, ammonia, and what have you. We develop these technologies and the catalysts that convert these raw materials into the molecules that society needs to thrive. Nowadays, it's a lot about CO2 conversion. Can you convert municipal solid waste, biomass of different composition, etc.? And the answer is yes. So that's why we develop our technology portfolio, and we call it feedstock agnostic. No matter what feedstock you have, we can help our customers convert those into, say, methanol, but also other SAF, FD-CANS technology, for example. And why is it important? Because the feedstock question, as also the colleagues say, is very complex. It depends on where you are on the planet and what access a certain customer has to certain feedstock. So we have customers like Repsol and Aramco building a plant using CO2 that they collect from refineries, combine it with green hydrogen in our Hycogen technology to make SAF components, for example. So they use CO2. Others use residual biomass that we can gasify and then make syngas and make fuel components or methanol and then fuel components. So there are many different, municipal solid waste is another one. And of course there is blends between municipal solid waste and biomass to make sure that you don't transport the feedstock over too long distances. Blending all types of feedstock like you allude to is also very important. So you need very robust technologies that can deal with that changing composition also actually throughout the year. The biomass composition is changing or the municipal solid waste composition is changing. Mm-hmm. And I think that is why we develop our portfolio being feedstock agnostic. And I think it is crucial to be successful on the global stage.
Yeah, yeah. And Sylvain, from your side, that's something that you guys are also focusing on?
Yeah, absolutely. So first, just a quick word on Technip Energies. We are a 17,000 people company focusing from, I would say, license to project delivery in the energy space. And we have 5,000 people in India. You said that you were feedstock agnostic. I think what we can say on our side is that we are technology agnostic. We have our own technologies, but we work as well with other technologies. And I would say one of the biggest challenge of the SAF industry is actually feedstock. It's good that we can use a variety of feedstock, as you said. I mean, use cooking oil, ethanol, syngas, and so on, municipal waste to convert to syngas, and so on and so forth. But it's also a threat to the SAF industry because there's a huge variability when it comes to feedstock. There's the challenge of availability as well. And we see that that's why we need to work on all technologies, because some technologies will eventually run out of feedstock. And as you said earlier, in India, you have abundance of ethanol and ethanol to G, and that's actually great for India, and it's great for the SAF industry in India, so that it's something that we can build here. One other thing as well that we can add on the feedstock is that it will also be linked to the regulations and the carbon intensity associated with the feedstocks that we will use. So it's important, as you said, to be feedstock agnostic and to work on all technologies so that we can allow the SAF industry to take off. And eventually, depending on the regulations, the geographies, what is available or not, then we can build a strong and robust SAF moving forward.
So I'm going to come on to regulation in a bit, but I want to kind of go back to something that a lot of you have mentioned around, the greenhouse gas savings and the carbon intensity score. Because a lot of the time when we talk about SAF, people look at that headline number, that it's, $2,000 a metric ton, when you're talking about a volumetric. But we all know that there are many different types, of pathways of producing SAF. So, how does that ethanol to jet kind of pathway look from both a cost perspective, but also from that carbon intensity score side? Ashish?
Okay.
Yeah.
I can attempt to answer that. But yeah, right now, my technical team tells me there are almost 11 plus pathways to get to the same molecule that we call SAF. And not all pathways are made equal. So it's going to be an interesting sort of contest between these different pathways. You just heard from the colleagues here that you can make it completely agnostic of the feedstock. But when you look at long term, and when I say long term, I'm talking about maybe 20, 30, 40 years. And when you look at these different pathways, the one that really seems to be more and more viable will be from alcohols to the jet. And the reason for that is the plentifulness and the assurance of supply that can come through the alcohol to jet pathway. Or at least that is what is the analysis that we have done at Praj, which is the company that I represent. And we also believe that when you look at the second or the third generation alcohol, which will also become popular in the time to come, then the CI score, or the carbon intensity number, as we call it, is going to be the lowest because it's coming from waste, and we are trying to convert that into valuable molecules. So if I have to put my $10 on those, one of those pathways, I would pick up the alcohols to jet, and within that, right now, ethanol to jet.
It's a good answer, because obviously when we say A to J, not all A to J is the same, is it? There are lots of different kind of types on the market as well.
Yes.
Does anyone want to add that on the kind of the CI and the cost question? I can see VJ nodding again. Yeah.
It's a very exciting subject for me, and what we at TrueVault believe, and why we're very aggressive to fast track implementing one of the first plants in India for SAF. Just yesterday we had an announcement with Honeywell to set up a 80 KTA 80,000 tons per annum sort of a capacity in Andhra Pradesh. One, we are already sitting with just on the molasses to ethanol. That's the one that has about 15, 16 of carbon intensity. We have close to 1,800 crore liters of gross ethanol available in the country, of which close to 1,100 crore liters, that is almost about 11 billion liters of ethanol is already available. And a liter of ethanol can give you 0.6 liters of SAF. So it's a humongous opportunity, as what Ashish ji just mentioned, as to the opportunity on the availability of feedstock, because it's a very important aspect. And why I'm also excited is the aviation industry is so humongous. Um, the aviation industry, again, just fun numbers, is that we have close to about 30,000 aircrafts that are flying globally. And these 30,000 aircrafts are responsible to transport only 1% of frequent flyers in the world. And the order books with the large aircraft manufacturers that are currently lodged already are for another 22 or 1,000 aircrafts, which are set to hit the skies by 2040. Right? Yeah. So there's humongous growth in the aviation industry. And the aviation industry, the 1% frequent flyers, are responsible for 4% of gross global emissions. And if that 1% becomes 2%, it's not a fun place to live in. So the potential that India has in order for us to be a net global exporter of aviation fuel is phenomenal, for a simple fact that we have so much of molasses to ethanol available. And thanks to companies like Technip and Sir, and of course Praj also, and all the great technology companies, they have already cracked how to actually produce these molecules. It's just companies like us need to actually bear this responsibility, come in, invest, produce it, so that we make the world a better place tomorrow.
So let's ask that question from a technology perspective. What is needed on that side to really get that economies of scale, that Vijay is talking about?
Yeah, I think the economy of scale is very important, not just for the economy per se, but of course also for the carbon index, because at the carbon intensity in our industry, when you're talking about chemicals or you talk about fuels or fuel components, yeah, it is massive, right? It is always huge. And we have learned from the oil and gas industry, chemical industry, and what have you, how quickly costs go down with scale, and so it's one of the most important levers. So what is really important is that as technology providers do a few things. First of all, we guarantee that it works at a massive scale. Yeah, that you switch on the new plant, $1, $2, $3, $5 billion is sometimes invested per plant based on our technology. And when you switch it on, it works. So technology readiness is important, and a lot of the technologies are ready, and the technology components are ready. The other thing is make sure that you reduce the cost by design once, build many times, modularization, having the same connectors in ports and ships all around the world to make it shippable at low cost. All these kind of things, also linked to regulations, are very, very important as well. And the other element is, of course, partnerships. Because what we do, for example, in the SAF alliance that we launched is we developed the technology together with BP, FT-CAN's technology, to convert syngas into every alkane that you can make. But it's a blend, and you need to refine it. And with our partners at UOP Honeywell, they have that refinery part that you can, upgrade the molecules to the molecules that you need to produce the SAF. Then gasification is the front end. You need to gasify your raw materials. So municipal solid waste, biomass, different compositions around the world and across the seasons, as I already mentioned. So we work with Jadara, who can do that and have a long history and pilot plant to do that and demonstrate that it works on your feedstock. So again, you're de-risking. And then we work with Samsung, who wraps the whole thing and can build the facility for the customer. And why is it important? Is in this partnership, you look at all the unit operations and you design them such together that you have like the lowest cost CAPEX solution for the customer, And of course, your engineering company can really help with their view on how to drive cost out as well. So what you do is with reputable partner, you de-risk the endeavor for customers. Some of them are project developers, are new to the game. And you can say, listen, if you work with us, we guarantee that it works. And I think that is a very important element, because then you take out the risk. Insurance risk goes down, insurance premiums go down, bankability goes up, interest rate go down. It also helps attract financiers that feel like, hey, this is a de-risk project. I have a long list of opportunities. I'll pick this one. So I think that's the third element, the partnerships element.
Yeah.
But be ready to scale it. And India is, of course, a fantastic area to build large facilities in this space.
Now, the partnership is an interesting one. We're talking about scaling up, and, everyone cannot operate in a silo. It seems like partnerships are becoming very important. So I don't know, Sylvain, from your side, how important would you see that for answering the question of making more SAF available?
Yeah, first I can echo with what you said. I had on my note exactly the words that you put, so I will have to change my speech now.
You're welcome.
No, but it's great to see that we are aligned. The other thing as well that is great is that you said earlier that you're ready to put some money in alcohol to jet, and it's also what we have done, because we believe it's where we can reach the best affordability. And I think that's a word that is absolutely key, is how to make SAF affordable. If it's not affordable, we can have all the regulation of the world, then we will see people fighting against regulations. The three words I had in mind was standardization. That is absolutely key, and we see that in alcohol to jet is something that we can do. So to have a standard capacity, a standard approach, to have contractor specifications, and to ensure that we can repeat 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 plants, exactly as you said, Moritz, just before. Because reaching this repeatability is what will drop the cost down. Because then we can work with partners on the supply chain, so across the supply chain, with suppliers, and give confidence to our clients that, as you said, Moritz, as well, that are not necessarily coming from the traditional chemicals, oil and gas business, but are coming from a different space. That are finance-backed, and therefore they need certainty of results, certainty of schedule, performance wrap. So this repeatability is key, and this will go through partnership. And then scalability, as I said earlier, and as you said as well, is absolutely key, because, okay, we will standardize for a certain capacity, but as things will evolve, there will be a demand for higher capacity, as we have seen in any industry in the decarbonization space, where with more and more projects, we see people wanted to do larger capacity, and therefore we need to be able to expand what we are doing. So affordability, standardization, partnership, and scalability. And if we cannot meet those 4 points, usually it's 3, but I said 4, we will fail. So, but I think that we have all the recipes to succeed together as an industry. It's not one or the other.
You also mentioned finance, availability of finance. And I have heard that is another challenge, in terms of you have this concept, this idea, you've got partners, but you need obviously the finance to really kind of get it off the ground. Perhaps, Vijay, we can kind of mix the order up and we can go there. You're obviously, focused on building these facilities. How difficult is it from the getting the backing to really, get the production that you want?
We earlier thought that it's going to be a very difficult and a very uphill task to actually get capital to doing this. But we later realized that there is a lot of capital that is focused onto solving this challenge of decarbonizing the aviation sector. Now, it might be the oil and gas companies, it might be the pension capitals, it might be ESG funds, it might be airlines themselves, or it could also be the technology providers who would want to partner. It is fantastic that the global, or at least the heads of the capitals that are sitting, are actually thinking of the problem that the aviation industry has. And they are not just speaking about this problem, they're also trying to put their money where their thoughts are. For us to set up this plant, we actually tried to do roadshows and try and seek opportunities there where we could try and bring in some foreign entities to partner with us and some domestic entities that could come partner with us. It's actually quite surprising that we're actually fighting between, I mean, on a lighter note, we're fighting between ourselves with the potentials that we have on how much equity who owns. So that's the kind of opportunity that
It's a
the space
good
has.
position to be in, I
Yes,
think,
absolutely.
not the norm.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I think there is humongous potential, and I couldn't agree more with what Sylvain said. If we do the standardization and if we can try and bring down the cost of the molecule, this is a fantastic space. I mean, the opportunity is very large, very, very large.
Ashish, anything to add?
I just, yeah, I was tempted to add something more. I think, all the points that the fellow panelists have said are important. But I believe that one thing which is really going to give a fillip to this is uh, every government's, push to scale up this whole SAF ecosystem, right? And it's going to be a difficult but an important uh, element of getting the scaling up done. We are talking about 1%, 2%, but maybe we need to be far more ambitious. I think we need to think about like a double digit number. That's my personal view. And I think it is possible because we do have pathways that will meet that demand if that demand is generated by some kind of a policy push. And I think that's very, very critical. I really applaud the decision that Vijay and his company TrueAlt have taken because it needs courage, to put such a big capital and believe in this whole ecosystem. And I'm sure he will be successful. There is no doubt about it. But if he's aided by the technology, that is standardization, etc., that we heard about, so that the costs are low, and also the policy that will create the demand because of the push, I think this industry can be very successful.
So let's build on that policy point, because there are a lot of policies for SAF, but they are different in a lot of ways. We have the EU, which is technically a 2% volumetric delivery to airports. We have the UK, which is a little bit different, and the UK also has a guaranteed strike price for non-HEFA fuels as well. We have Singapore, where the government is actually getting involved in the supply chain. And then we have the US, which is not a mandated volume, but supports the voluntary demand with the federal and state level kind of credits and benefits. So if we're talking about policy, what is the best policy? What should that look like? And I'll say why I'm asking that. And we've talked about the benefits of A to J from a CI perspective. If your policy is only volumetric, and we've talked about that cost difference, how are you really going to keep that stimulated kind of demand for a fuel that is better from a carbon intensity perspective, but is more costly?
Do you want me to
Yes,
attempt?
do you want to carry it? We're going to go
It's
along
a
the
tough
whole
one.
line.
I wish I knew the answer, but here is what my take is. It's going to be almost impossible to get everybody in the world to agree on one single policy. And if we wait for that, it'll take many years and we don't know whether we'll get there. The world is becoming multilateral. You see that every day in the news, and so it's just an indication that we will all have to be open for different types of policies. And when I say that, it could be that Europe has a different policy, Asia has a different policy, US or North America has a different policy. But there will be enough players in the overall global ecosystem that will want to serve aligned to that policy. So I guess my point is, let's start. Right now, there is a bit of a sluggishness in this entire SAF area. And even if we have no meeting of minds on one single policy globally, even if we have 3 or 4 different policies, let the market decide as to where they want to align, which policies they believe in, and therefore they want to produce the fuel aligned to that policy, and over the journey, things will start becoming clearer and more aligned, is my belief.
Maritz?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think because we need to zoom out a little bit. That's at least what I try to do every now and then. Is we're talking like in your introduction, we're talking about on a good day 1% of the airline fuel is SAF. So let's double it to 2 or triple it to 3. I mean, we're talking about a little bit still, and I think we need to explore all technology routes, the different feedstock around the world, also different policies. There's countries that say, I don't care what it costs. It is of national interest to become more independent. So I want to be self-sufficient, and green is important, and we're going to scale it in my country, and we make it really cheap. What that cheap exactly is and what the carbon intensity of every molecule exactly is, I don't care too much, because I just bet that also here, these basic principles we just discussed, like if I make supply chains really big and facilities really and standardized, and facilities really big and standardized, I don't know if the cost will go down by 50, 60 or 70%, but it's not 5, 6 or 7. So if you believe in those basic scaling principles, there's countries that go for that and others take different choices. And I think it's not about one or the other. Let's experiment together, learn what is the best solution for your ecosystem. And before we are, at 30, 40, 50% of the components, and you start to get like really a global arbitration and what have you, that's still a very long way. And I think until then, let's explore all these different pathways. And what we haven't discussed yet is, of course, the willingness to pay. Also there it is like, but your air tickets become so much more expensive and what have you. It's very interesting because a few years back, I talked to a lot of airlines, and I was in a panel with one very big airline, and they said, it's not important. They said it. Because you're talking about, at that time, 0.5%. There is people that want to pay more. We have tickets that pre-COVID business class costed $3,000 and now $10,000, and the planes are full. That's $7,000 more in 3 years for a ticket between Europe and the US. They said it's not a problem. There is sufficient willingness to pay that can help us scale the industry, reduce the costs, and then make it more affordable for all the other people. But you're talking about 1 or 2%, and we can do it. And a nice example was recently, I'm from the Netherlands originally, but we live in the UK, and my wife had to travel up and down between Amsterdam and London, and she showed me her ticket from the KLM. You just have to fly with SAF, and it tells you on the ticket, we charge you so much, and there's no way out. And I was on the panel with a lady from the KLM later on, and she said, yeah, that's just what we do, because we believe it's the right thing to do. It is only a couple of pounds on the ticket. Their feedback has been overwhelmingly positive by the consumers, and every little bit helps, because there's so many flights, it pays for bringing this industry initially to a larger scale. So we should also not make it overly complex and just start doing it at a large scale all around the world and learn by doing.
It's interesting because, airlines are always saying, our margins are very small, it's a real big concern, and there are some very price-sensitive consumers out there. Sure. And if you look at, the long-term price forecasting, the feedstock question, availability, there are a lot of upward trajectories there. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out.
Can I give you some statistics on that?
Go ahead.
Last year we did a quick study for an airline ticket from Mumbai to Delhi. Okay, and we assumed certain parameters, of course, and we said, okay, if we do 2% blending of the SAF into the aviation turbine fuel, you won't believe that the cost of the ticket because of that just increased by under 100 rupees. Yeah. So I'm just supporting what you just now mentioned. And if you look at different online ticket booking sites, they will charge you probably 150 to 200 rupees of convenience fees.
Yeah.
And people just pay for it. Yes. So it could be a myth that, it's going to be a huge cost burden on the end consumer when SAF comes in. And as we start blending more and more, the belief is that the economies of scale on the production side also will become better, and the costs of production will also come down.
Yeah. And Vijay, kind of, did you go back to the policy kind of point we were talking about? How is that from your side? Because obviously, you've got what's considered 2G ethanol, which is more expensive. Is that all going to head to Europe because of demand there, or is it a case of, as we say, economies of scale, and it will be price competitive here? So how is that policy fragmentation, playing out in the real world?
No, I thoroughly enjoyed what Mr. Morris said. Just the statement that even if you achieve that 1%, for us to double our industry, it's only a 2% impact, and to quadruple it, it's only a 4% impact. At the same time, what Mr. Ashish also mentioned is the cost impact, even if we consider today, so our estimation or back of envelope calculation against your A turbine fuel to your sustainable aviation fuel from alcohol to jet using ethanol is hardly 2x of what it is with air turbine fuel, right? This is our preliminary estimates. Now, on the same calculation, that is where we were super bullish, and we did the same back of the envelope calculation, and we get the price impact on a liter of fuel consumed or on the gross airline once it's filled is negligible. So, in terms of policy framing, I think I would require three support systems from the government or from the larger ecosystem. I'm speaking of our true perspective. It's just not on offtakes, on how the aircrafts are filled. It's not just on the premiums that the aircraft or the airline carriers would end up taking, or the consumers in the end, the flyers are end up going to pay. We also need to look at carbon trading, the carbon benefits trading, carbon certificates trading, book and claim. There are a lot of industries. For example, let's say the data centers, if they're consuming conventional fuel or conventional energy, they would require to offset their carbon emissions. They could fund the premiums that are there on the aviation industry. More so, let's say the technology companies, let's say the AI companies, let's say just to take a name of a company, let's say the Microsofts and the big companies that are there, they have a lot of travel. These guys usually are the frequent flyers, and they have a lot of energy consumption. And because they consume a lot of energy in back office equipment, they don't have a lot of opportunities to actually reduce their carbon emissions. Here we have an opportunity. So that is another big opportunity for book and claim. Recently, India and Japan collaborated on a JCM methodology, the Joint Carbon Mechanism, wherein countries that have smaller landmass or that have lesser raw materials available could try and build on the larger spaces like India or Brazil or the United States, for example, who have enough feedstock. They could try and pitch in for the premiums, and they can, if they're unable to produce SAF or take the SAF there, they could always have this book and claim sort of a mechanism. So I think these three are very important, which are probably very solvable. And I am very optimistic that, at least in India, the policymakers are looking at this on a holistic level.
So you think there'll be moved towards a kind of India book and claim rather than a kind of mass balanced system?
So the first step would be on a standardized carbon accounting, right? So if we have the right method, a universally accepted methodology for actually counting the carbon emissions, and it's acceptable to everyone. Now there are companies like RSP, ISSCT. These are the globally approved, or rather, accepted certification bodies. If we have them actually do the counting of the carbon emissions or the carbon savings, and if they come out with an exchange program wherein anybody globally can come and buy the carbon and offset the cost that the airline carriers or let's say the frequent flyers could actually bear, I think it is solving two problems. It is solving the problem for the other industry for them to actually decarbonize. It is actually also solving the problem for the SAF industry, wherein initially only, and I'm very confident on this, the premiums that we end up paying is definitely going to be for the initial phase. If we were to compare this with the wind and solar energy, just India perspective, just about 15 years ago, we paid almost 15 rupees, almost 20 rupees a unit of power, which was sourced from renewable energy. That 20 rupees has today become 2.5 rupees. That's that's the beauty of renewables. And I think that's exactly what we could replicate in the aviation, or rather the biofuel sphere by large.
So we should have this panel in 10 years and see if we're talking about SAF at, twice or 3 times the cost.
I just hope I have 10 plants by that time.
Yeah. Okay, and so then we never really got to your kind of views on policy, and you kind of mentioned it a couple of times that fragmentation was causing issues from your side. Did you want to kind of expand, and give your thoughts on how that is creating an obstacle to the industry?
Yeah, I think it's what was said before, is that SAF is a very different market than what we have seen in the traditional, I would say, oil and gas or chemical market. Overall, it's very fragmented, and it has a lot of geographical specificities. And I think, echoing what Moritz said earlier, at the end we have to remember that SAF is a lever for decarbonization, industrialization, and energy sovereignty. So it's important as well to give the freedom to see what is the best technology for the said market to take off. And I'm not sure that all the policies are actually giving the freedom to developers or to technology providers, as we are on this panel, to come up with what is best for the country or for the industry, for the airline industry, to ultimately lower the price, as you said. The cost of electricity in some areas is much more expensive than in others. So why do we want to push for power to X, while in others it makes a lot of sense and it's actually not part of the policies? So it's something that we should all work on, and as well, that's why it's important as well to explore all the technologies, so that ultimately we can make the best choices for a geography. So as we said earlier, India has abundant ethanol, so alcohol to jet is probably the best technology there. So I think if we have a mandate of SAF that is a bit holistic, then it helps, because then we can push what is best for India. And as you said earlier, the cost of electricity in India and renewable is going down and down and down. So eventually, power to SAF or eSAF could be a solution for India, but I'm not sure it's by imposing today a mandate on eSAF that you will reach that. So I think it has to be a collaborative approach between technology providers, developers, fuel providers, and airlines to see what is best for the country and for the ecosystem we are all operating in, which is adding the complexity, as we said, of the fragmented market. But we won't escape from it. And if we want to escape from it, I think we will fail.
So we've mentioned the aviation industry. We don't have any airlines, obviously, on this panel. And we've talked about, the business consumer and the voluntary demand. But, is there more, or perhaps a more collaborative approach that the aviation industry as a whole could be doing to help us along this decarbonization path?
Oh, yeah, certainly. Finally, they are the end consumers, right? So they have to be a very, very important part of the entire supply chain. And maybe it gives us good insights by looking at other such biofuels, or why even biofuels. You look at any other industries where the new introduction of technologies have become successful and have scaled up. And one of the things that comes to my mind is that if there is a medium to long term offtake agreement that gets signed by the end consumers, and in this case it is the airlines, if they want to have a sustained supply, assured supply of the right quality of SAF that they can guarantee is coming from the right sources, it's going to be important for them to then come to people like Vijay's company and have long-term, contract agreements. It does two things. It takes away the variability in the whole ecosystem. And as everybody knows, in any system, if there is variability, there is fear Therefore, there are sentiments, and those sentiments are then linked to the pricing changes that happen. So if we can smoothen this entire, sort of ecosystem, one such thing which is important for us to tie in airlines and therefore the end consumers will be to have these long-term contracts. And I think those can happen only when, as we talked about, the policies and some of the regulation that comes into play.
Yeah, the risk management side of what we're looking at.
That's right.
Did you want to add something?
No, I fully agree. I fully agree. And what I would like to say is, you need to bring them into the pact, and that's what's happening. And I think actually that there is quite a lot of airline companies that are really already having take or pay contracts, or at least take off contracts. And I think it's crucial, because otherwise you are remaining in this catch-22, this chicken and egg story, where they have mandates to fulfill but can't get the molecules. So that is then the fear of losing out. It's maybe becoming a board discussion on your license to operate and what have you. They can't get the molecules. But on the other hand, the project developers or anyone who wants to produce and scale this says, yeah, but my first, a pilot plant, 10, 20, 30, 100 million I can do, but these big plants are $1 billion plus. I can't do it. It's not bankable. I have no offtake at the right price, and in particular also certainly it's not for 1 or 2 years. It's 10 years plus contracts that I need to make sure that I can earn my money back, and that's why you need to bring those two together, and that's what's happening. And I think that is really an absolute necessity, because together we can scale this industry. I think actually rather rapidly. And again, okay, initially it might be a little bit more expensive, but it's for a few % of the market. Let's embark on that journey as soon as possible together, all, pay a little bit extra or whatever it is, a little bit depressed margins at the onset, start to experiment with how this scales this industry. And then over time, we just have the best solutions and at scale, whether it's from a carbon intensity point of view or cost, and usually both. So I think it is so crucial to work together.
Okay. So we have just under 10 minutes left. So I'm going to try and bring our little discussion to a kind of slight conclusion. So we've discussed feedstock, policy, fragmentation, we've got the whole spectrum. But what I'm going to ask my panelists here is to try and pick one. We're talking about scaling SAF. So when talking about that, what do they view as the main blocker? If they had to pick the top issue that they think is restricting that SAF growth potential, what would it be? And I'm afraid, Sylvain, I'm going to start at the opposite end. So I'm going to ask you to go first.
I think it's at the same time a blocker, but it's a solution, is to have true partnerships. And so that we need to be all open-minded to be able to partner with a feedstock provider, a technology provider, an airline or equivalent, all together to take this industry to take off. And this is unusual. It's unusual for the airlines, it's unusual for the feedstock provider, and it's unusual for a technology or EPC company. But it can be done. And what we see is that the best projects, the projects that are taking off, are the ones made of strong partnership, and it's the only way that we will succeed. So I'm convinced that we will win the affordability battle on SAF through partnership, and tomorrow it will be the solution.
Okay, thank you. Vijay.
So I completely agree to what Sylvain says. It's difficult to pick one, what we actually need in the space for this to be a big success. But if I were to sum it up, we need a holistic roadmap to achieving our targets. Now, a lot of the countries, a lot of companies like us, we've all taken these mandates, or we have a target that, let's say, Corsia gave a declaration that by 2027, I need to have all the developed countries to consume 1% of SAF, including India, 2% by 28 and 5% by 2030. We're already in 2026 now, and we're stepping into the second month of the year. We don't have a roadmap just yet. So the next year is my targets to start blending, and I don't have a roadmap just yet. So one interesting thing that I have is, I mean, the what actually motivates me is, whenever you try booking your airline tickets on any of the websites, you actually see the level of carbon each seat is carrying, the emissions that each seat is actually creating. So if you book a first class, you have this. If you book a business, you have X. A premium, you have Y. And if you book a economy, you have Z. So that actually is, I mean, there is a sublime awareness of how much of our travel is actually harming the ecosystem. That would actually, like how Mr. Morris said, KLM has a mandate already, and they said, this is what we are offering, you'll have to accept it. That is the way forward, is what I would believe. So we really have to come together and say, no, this is the way forward. And if we are all putting all our eggs in the same direction, we will make it work, and we'll make it work in a better way. So I think roadmap to actually achieving this is what is required.
And do you see that from an airline ticket, or do you see more kind of the Singapore model where you've got, here's a levy, everyone pays, that's it?
No, I think either or, both could work. In the end, it is let's say the ethanol story in India. Government came around and said, if you don't blend 20% of ethanol with petrol, you are going to pay a premium of 2 rupees a liter. And the country said, I'm not going to pay that 2 rupee, I'm going to blend ethanol with it. Thanks to that, there is about 15 odd crore farmers, that's almost about 150 million farmers in India that are getting almost twice the revenue that they were getting a few years ago. It's not just the decarbonizing element, it's also the number of socialist achievements that this whole sector is creating, because every molecule is actually feeding thousands of people in the pyramid. So I think it's going to be the governments or the companies voluntarily, like how KLM has done, come out and say, this is the way forward for me, and you will have to realign or calibrate to this approach. I think that's very, very important.
Okay. Maritz, your top roadblocker?
Yeah, I'm completely with Sylvain here, as you also will have heard from my earlier answer about this partnership. I want to extend it a little bit now beyond partnerships of industrial players. We need to think a little bit ahead as well, and that means bring the regulators in, bring authorities in, because if we talk about power to X, right, a green hydrogen production, which will boost SAF production, for example, from biomass, you need a lot of renewable power. Yeah, you need to transport that power. If then a permit to extend the grid takes 10 years, you lose a lot of valuable time. So make sure that we connect early with the infrastructure companies, and also the infrastructure companies from there is an infrastructure for blending, and there are pipelines to airports. So ideally you build your SAF plants, and we see many of our customers and project developers doing it close to where the blending and the refueling happens. If then in that area, again, a permit takes a very long time to be allowed to build your plant or to connect to such an infrastructure, we again are missing the point. So it's partnerships along the supply chain, industrial players, but let's also work with all the others around us. It will just greatly accelerate.
Yeah. Reminds me of a story I heard about an Australian airport that they forgot to put the pipeline in. They built the airport and they suddenly realized that they might need fuel for the airport. So let's keep that collaborative nature. Ashish, your top roadblocker.
Yeah, on this one, I think I would go with a little bit of a stick approach, which is absolute blending mandate with consequences. Because nothing will bring the movement than this particular action. And we've seen this happen in India here some years ago when India moved from, we have a BS standard, Bharat stage, it's like European EU6 standard. And we moved from earlier standard with 2 jumps straight to BS6. And it just happened because there was a mandate that diesel has to be with such and such specification, gasoline has to be with such and such specification. So it really works. Yeah, you have a date which is declared. I think that's what was being called as roadmap by Vijay. And if we have that clearly, then all these partnerships and the alignment with the supply chain will start to form because everybody will be in a hurry. So I would pick that approach.
So a stick, but also a long-term view, and so you kind of know where you're going with it as well.
That's right.
Okay. I think we're gonna end there, and I think, as we've heard, there's a lot of challenge, but there's a lot of opportunity within this space, and collaboration across the supply chain seems to be kind of the unifying factor, and that we need to really work together to be able to decarbonize this challenging industry. So I'd like me to thank Ashish, Marit, Vijay, and Sylvain for your expertise, for a very interesting discussion. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.